Hello, and again, welcome to Bit Depth. I'm Santiago Ramones. Across from me is...
My name is Bryndon York. Yeah.
I guess usually with people that I know face to face, how do we know each other?
When you and I met, UCO. Yeah, theory class. I think it was either 2 or 3 or 4. I know it wasn't 1. Mm. I think I had Natalie Searing for 1. And then I think I remember having McGrill with you.
Yeah.
So
that was probably 3 or 4.
Yeah, one of
3
those.
and 4.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And I'm best friends with your brother. That's kind of been the main way of us kind of communicating, I think, at this point.
Yeah, and I feel like there's people around that I've gotten to know through UCO or through whatever that I'm like, I want to get to know this person a little bit more, and I just haven't had the chance to, because this is how I get to know people.
Absolutely.
Which is hours long conversations about deep shit. So this is what the podcast is for.
I mean, I love deep shit, so I'm all about it.
So I guess, who are you and what do you do?
So I do a couple things. My artistic endeavors are mainly restricted to music, like playing guitar, composing, and then I also do photography. I was sort of in education for a while. Mm-hmm. I did do private lessons, and I taught at Cashin public schools for a little bit. But cool. But it's at this point, it's mainly composition when it comes to music and photography, and I guess some videography, and just kind of those things particularly.
Which of these is your primary one?
Well, guitar playing is definitely the number one thing that I do, and then composition probably comes second. And then photography kind of arose from those things, because I actually bought a camera to make videos for, I do a lot of cover videos. And when I do have the time to make videos of my own recordings, which I haven't really done a lot of, but when I do that, I do that. And the camera, when I bought it, it kind of opened up this sort of this door in my mind, I guess. It was kind of like, okay, I have this complex piece of technology now, and I can use that. I don't know. I just suddenly realized that I could do photography. So I'm somebody who tends to get really obsessive over things. So there was a good 6-month period where that took over. Photography was just going out and exploring and taking pictures of anything I could find. So
and then you find out that Oklahoma City is not very interesting for photography, and so you get the few places, and that's pretty much it.
There's some truth to that. Yeah, I definitely have explored some of the same locations several times. And I've got a series of different photos as it progresses throughout the year. So I've got winter photos, and I do a lot of nature photography. And I've done a lot of downtown photography, and I don't know. It was more like. Music is such a time consuming process, and you put a ton of time into it. And then at the end you get a minute of reward, a tiny little snippet. And photography was one of those things I could go out for an entire day and take pictures for, 4 or 5 hours, and then come back and have this huge, compilation of all these things that I think are beautiful or interesting, so that was a huge juxtaposition. From music and just being creative in that way versus being the other way. So
I think I've heard someone describe that visual art and paintings and photography are decorations for space, but music is decoration for time.
I think that's an accurate way of of portraying it, for sure.
Using that to segue into, how did you get started in music?
Okay, so my father was a guitar player, and he kind of, he exposed me to a lot of music growing up. I listened to a lot of Metallica, and I'm a big metalhead, but in a lot of country when I was younger. And he did a lot of things where he would while we were riding in the car, he'd kind of ask me who's this artist or who's this artist, And I think that did a pretty good job of forcing me to critically listen at a young age, even though I didn't know that's what I was doing. I just, and I definitely leaned in the Metallica direction more, probably. I became sort of way more important to me. And then fast forward several years, my family and I moved to Mexico for a little while. And I got my first real guitar lesson in Mexico. I was probably like 13 at the time, I think. And it was really difficult because they use a different music system, obviously. And on top of that, the guy was translating his native language of Spanish to English.
Dang.
So it was a really confusing mess for a young 13-year-old mind of my own. And so after we returned to the United States from Mexico, I just kind of had this, like, I knew I wanted to play music. I always had that desire. But I basically just like begged my parents to get me an acoustic guitar. And so like that Christmas I got one, and I kind of just made the decision that I was going to teach myself, because at that point I didn't really have exposure to people in my family that were really musically minded. And so, I just,
real quick, what was that guitar, and do you still have it?
I do have it still. It was a Fender, just a cheap $100 Fender steel string acoustic. Ironically, I actually like marked with a silver Sharpie in the major and minor or major scale, I guess, and minor. All like in like, I think it was C major, all over the entire neck, just so I could figure it out. And now I look back on that and I cringe a little bit, like thinking about like the fact that I look at that guitar and see those little marks on it and everything.
Yeah, but it's kind of a piece of your history showing like how you learned.
Yeah, it's got a piece of blue painter's tape on it too. From when I was, young middle school teenager boy, wanted to be really cool and put it over my back like the country music guitar players or whatever. And then the strap fell off and it fell down and busted the corner of it really bad. So I've dubbed it Old Blue since then.
Nice.
But I proceeded to teach myself guitar for about 5 years. And in that time period, music was such like a mystery to me. It was such an enigma. And I didn't really, I don't know. I didn't know what it was or how it worked. I just was playing and doing a lot by ear. I got pretty technically competent, just because I was doing a lot of exercise, like just exercises, technical exercises, because that's really all I knew how to like practice. But as after that, I actually decided to go to music school once I graduated high school, and that kind of helped a ton, obviously. So
were you in bands and stuff through like middle school, high school? Those awful bands.
I'm not going to plug the band, but I was in a terrible band in high school. I started it with one of my good friends at the time. We did this 2-year endeavor of playing really hardcore, brutal death metal music, and we had some good shows. I got to play live for a lot of people, and played with
the conservatory, I'm guessing.
Oh yeah, we played with Whitechapel at the Conservatory and Carnifex and all those guys. So it was like the heavy stuff, and I was the long-haired metal kid that wore the vibrant black T-shirts with all the heavy metal lettering all over it and everything. So that was kind of like my inception, I guess, my beginning of my musical career.
Every teenager has to like let that aggression out. And all of the music leading teenagers have a screamo band in like middle school, high school.
No, for sure. Especially for us. I mean, that was, I went to high school from my freshman year to my junior year in a small town in Chandler, Oklahoma. And I knew the whole time I was playing guitar a lot, and I really only had like one friend that played guitar who was really good. Ty Christie, by the way, great guitar player. And then my senior year, we moved to Edmond, and that was when we went from like a class, like a graduating class of like 100 to like 1,000, or something. I don't remember exactly what it was, but that was when I kind of thought, okay, I can find people here that will be able to play music. And me and a couple guys, we managed to do it and practiced every week and just did whatever we could do to. But like I said, it's that band stuff was so drama filled, and it's like having 4 girlfriends, like
basically
like that's what it was. Like everybody's fighting, and I'm a bit of a mediator, so I was always trying to, stop the drama.
Right. Yeah. So I guess what drove your decision to go to music school, especially for classical guitar? Because that's a leap.
Yeah. Okay. So my mindset at the time was like, I knew that I had to go into music, just because I was extremely passionate, and that passion is really not died very much, but yeah, in my mind, I lacked so much knowledge of theory, and everything was still so mysterious, even after so many years of teaching myself. Like I could play fast, but a lot of that fast playing is very nonsensical, you know.
Yeah.
So
or not knowing what that fast playing means.
Yeah. I couldn't read you a scale. I couldn't tell you what notes were. Or I just knew that sounds heavy, or that sounds fast and interesting, or whatever it was. And so I just knew that I needed to have the information source to learn what I wanted to learn. And I thought that classical, like I remember going to UCO for the first time and like auditioning and trying to figure out where I wanted to go. And I actually met with Scott Johnson at the time, who was the guitar professor at UCO.
Yeah.
And I met with him, and I kind of just explained to him what I wanted to do. And I showed him a video of me playing. And then he posed me the question, well, would you rather play with a band, or do you want to play all the music yourself? And that was sort of the, I guess, defining moment.
Yeah.
It was like, well, I think I would rather kind of take this more polyphonic approach and try to play all the parts by myself. And so that's what kind of drove me towards the classical.
And that's what classical guitar is, like just play every part.
All the parts by yourself. Yeah, exactly. So, and then I also in my own mind thought, classical, there's a lot of like foundation there that would, I think, would help me with what I really want to do, which I still, even to this day, even after music school, after the classical thing, everything, I've still kind of been drawn back to my roots, which is playing progressive stuff and more interesting kind of like just stuff that's all over the board, and so like I needed a good foundation, and I thought that classical music would be a good idea for that. So
yeah, definitely. So I guess, do you feel like you, I guess, got what you wanted? Because I feel like, especially for both of us now being out of music school, it does kind of seem like you get a whole bunch of tools, but not a lot of like what to do with it. Yes. So it's like, I guess, what did you get out of music school?
I obtained a substantial amount of theoretical knowledge, way more than at least relatively speaking, like compared to what I was before. I had no idea what I was doing.
Yeah.
I was just using my ear, and I still, even to this day, I actually still mostly use my ear, but now I know what a chord is. Now I know what a scale is. Now I know what the difference between like melodic minor and harmonic minor is, or something, just things like that. And that has helped me tremendously. Knowing what an arpeggio is and being able to translate that into my own music has been extremely rewarding for my writing process, just because I don't feel like it doesn't seem like this like insurmountable mountain. Yeah. There's some sense to it and there's some logic to it. So it makes it a lot easier.
Do you feel like your playing would have remained the same, or I guess how did classical guitar school shape how you play the guitar? Okay,
so classical guitar is obviously mostly finger picking. That changed my guitar playing a ton. Yeah, going from only being able to play with a pick, and I could pick fast and I could alternate pick and do all those things, but
being sweep pick, bro.
I can sweep pick. Yes. It's a little bit of an overused thing, especially if it's like an entire phrase is sweep picking. But it's a nice thing to be used sparingly. But the finger picking stuff that changed my approach tremendously. Like being able to just take chords and then play like melodies and chord foundations like at the same time, and that helped tremendously.
What was the most challenging piece that you had to learn?
Oh, that's a hard decision. there was a Bach piece, a cello suite that was pretty difficult. That was probably, I always describe Bach like it's like when you're playing Bach, it's not like other pieces because it feels to me like riding on a train track, and if you fall off the train, like there's no way to getting back on. You know, that's how I always thought of it, and that was what it was for me. Was playing Bach was I think I played the Jig from cello suite number 2, maybe 3. I can't remember exactly right now. But I played that piece. It was about 4 minutes long, I think. And that was one that I practiced like to the nth degree. I think I played it for my senior recital, and for a year preceding that, I practiced it probably 2 hours a day. And that was just one of those ones that was like, it's kind of crazy because like the build up, the practice for that senior recital, and then you finally do it. It was like that 4 minutes is over instantaneously. And that build up, you're thinking about it every day, all the time.
Such a blur.
Yeah. And it just happens. It's over in a second. And the rewarding feeling I expected wasn't really something that happened. It was more just kind of like, well, you did all right. Like, good job. You know? So I guess, yeah.
You're just like, pass.
Yeah. And I was just kind of like, okay, well, I was ecstatic that I didn't mess it up or anything, but yeah, that was one of the harder pieces. There was a tango that I played that was pretty difficult because it was outside of something that I'm used to playing. Yeah. And there was a lot of like polyrhythmic stuff. It's like in the same hand that you kind of had to do, like 3/2 with like thumb and fingers and stuff like that, which was bizarre to me at the time. Now looking back, it's not that big of a deal. But that Tango in Sky by Roland Diaz, that was a pretty tough one. Yeah.
I feel like kind of with guitar, there's also like strangely simple sounding pieces that just wreck you.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Especially with classical guitar. What was one? I mean, like Ramones that comes to mind. It's not like crazy difficult. That was one of the first pieces I learned. This is actually an interesting thing. So I had been in a band and I was used to performing live with my friends and playing on stage by like with a group with a lot of distortion on our guitars. Yeah. And then I remember we had our first mock recital for classical guitar, and it was the first piece that I learned for classical guitar. I can't even remember the name at all. Yeah, it doesn't matter. But I remember going up there thinking like I was hot shit and you know, like, oh, this would be an easy thing. I'm playing for 5 guys, no big deal. Like they're all guitar players, so that changes the dynamic a little bit. But I played this piece for them and froze in the middle and completely stopped and realized this is an entirely different beast. Playing in a quiet room in front of people who know what you're doing, and they're not just like regular people that, you know, just consume music like
or like drunk or
whatever. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
You have no one else around you to kind of like vibe off their energy. Like it's just you.
Yeah, it's just you. And the distortion, there's no distortion. It's like you make a slight little mistake with your finger and you make a string sound or something, and it like lights you up inside, and there's adrenaline just like pours into your veins, you know? Oh yeah. So that was an eye-opening experience for sure. It was intense.
Yeah. Okay, so how did your musical influences change from before going to music school, after going to music school, and like now even way after, and kind of looking back and seeing how?
No, I can totally address this question. So, I before music school, I was very much like single-minded in my like what I consumed. I was just I loved the heaviest of the heaviest tech death, like brutal, you know, stuff. Basically, it was really, and a lot of that was just because I got that feeling from it, you know, that angsty kind of like kind of feeling. Yeah. And then my first year of college was actually at ACM. Okay. And I did performance guitar there. And they kind of began to explain like scales to us and like modes and all these things. And I had this sort of epiphany from going from my young brain who looked at music like this big mystery, you know, and I realized that all music is the same.
Yeah.
That was like that was the epiphany. Yeah. All the metal that I play, all the notes are the same as like the country music we listen to, or the classical music, or all of it. It's just all built on like Western foundation, you know, rules or whatever. And so when I made that realization, my perspective changed completely. I basically became open to everything.
Yeah.
And anything was cool if it was cool, kind of a deal. So,
yeah.
So looking back now, like I just wanted the heaviest of the heaviest. Now it's more like, what color can you draw forth? Like what, I mean, music is such like a visceral experience. Not, you know, I like lyrics and stuff, but I'm definitely more like into instrumental music.
Yeah.
Because it sort of paints a picture, and like the two aren't mutually exclusive, but so anything that can really draw forth that color that I'm looking for, that's, I mean, I was into those heavy death metal bands for a long time, and now I listen to, like, I mean, you and I've talked about this before, but I love Jacob Collier. If anybody hasn't ever heard of him, check him out. But, and then I don't really consume metal as much these days. I still have like a few bands that I really get into, like Meshuggah and Between the Buried and Me. But I do consume way more like jazz stuff and electronic stuff and just, I mean, it's all mostly guitar oriented, but
I guess that does kind of, what is your relationship with other instruments outside of guitar?
Okay. So, I think piano is probably the greatest instrument. Like, you know, I love guitar, but guitar is kind of like a Rubik's Cube, and it's not really logically laid out in a way that makes sense like from the get go. Yeah. Piano, it's like straightforward as it gets.
Push button, get note.
Yeah. Push button, get note. There's no calluses. There's no developing like the ability to play a scale. It's just like, you just play it right off the bat. And there's not like two of the same note on the instrument. Like you can't play like I could play a C4 in like, you know, a couple different locations or whatever on the guitar. But like, and then honestly, like I always thought that the most like the biggest, grandest instruments were always the greatest, right? So like pipe organ and like big choirs was like, oh, that was that was way too intense for my brain at times, you know, like, oh my gosh. And I think that probably alludes to why I like Jacob Collier so much, is because he's essentially a one-man choir. You know, that's the harmony that you get in the overtones and everything. It's just, it's mind blowing. So
and okay, so after kind of going off of the deep end in musical complexity, is there such a thing as bad music?
No, I don't think so. I mean, you can say that music's like, it's been done before, and you can say that music's like, you can say music's unappealing, you know, or that it's jarring, or that it's like, you know, it can be what's the word? It can push you away from it, I guess, but that doesn't mean it's inherently bad. Just like, because it's so subjective, and you know, even like something that is made to be purposefully bad could still be like seen as like interesting. And I think like the like I always sought out not even like good music. I always thought that like the best way to describe what I was looking for was interesting music. Because interest is a much more accurate way of portraying it. Just because like some of the best music I've ever found in my life, I did not immediately appreciate. You know, I definitely, it took some effort to like it, but when I did, it was like the most rewarding feeling once you actually get to that point, once you overcome that mountain and kind of begin to appreciate it. That was the best. So absolutely.
And then the other kind of usual question is, do you separate art from the artist?
I think you have to some degree. Sometimes it's hard. in a positive and negative way, because there are artists who are like you think are really great people, and that makes you like their music more. And there are artists who think they may not be so great of a person, but you still appreciate like their work. And like, I mean, someone who I wholeheartedly appreciate who has not been given such good press is Michael Jackson. You know, I mean, I went through a phase where I was obsessed with his music. And then, you know, I mean, I can't draw forth a ton of examples, but I mean, like Jacob Collier comes up again because it's hard to separate like who he is as a person and like what he's capable of from like even some of his like creations that I may not find like all that interesting. Cause it's like, I know the brain behind who's creating that. So it's, I almost want to appreciate it. I don't know if that's biased.
Even if you're not as interested
in it.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's bias or if that's just, I don't know, but it's hard not to like a song by him, and I hate to harp on this guy so much, but
it's freaking good music.
It is. It's unreal. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. How do you connect music to photography and video and the other sort of artistic mediums that you take part in? Okay.
It's video and music is easier probably to compare, just because they do they happen across time. And there is a sort of drama to music, like a play, or I mean, you know, there's a climax and a beginning and end, or you know, all the, not in that order, but and video can be somewhat the same way. Like you want to make if you're cutting and editing video, you want it to play out kind of like a story. Even if it's something as simple as like a guitar cover where you're filming yourself play the same piece from different angles and putting it all together. Photography is really weird because I would go out and anything that caught my eye was something that I would just explore. And because of its immediate reward, like you can basically just take a picture of something, edit it a little bit, and it could be really pretty. Whereas music, like if I were to try to do that same thing with music, I'd be spending 12 hours a day on my computer, you know, and trying to get something of value out of a lot of time spent. Cause I you know, it's a blessing and a curse, probably more so a curse, I think, to be a perfectionist. And I definitely would describe myself that way. It's partially the reason why I have a difficult time displaying some of my creations publicly. Like even some of the stuff that I'm even proud of, I still have a hard time going I don't know if it's ready, you know? So whereas photography, something can be kind of like, even if it's only mildly interesting, I can just put it out and not really care. It just feels like something I just captured. It doesn't feel like it's part of my soul. You know, music feels like that.
You've also like spent a smaller fraction of your life dedicated to photography.
That's very true. Very true. Yes. That's music feels deeply personal. And anything that I display to the world is almost like an overwhelming, like, when I do it, it's overwhelming. You know, because I don't know how to react to that, what the response is, or because it's when I write music, I'm not considering anybody else, and so it's like, what do I find interesting and what I think is pretty and what's inspiring me right now, and that's all me. You know, and there's not, I don't really collaborate with a lot of people. So, so yeah, that's an overwhelming kind of thing to try to put out there, I guess.
With composition, I guess, I don't know. It's a weird thing for me, 'cause like I'm primarily a composer. And so like the separation between like performer and composer is very distinct.
Oh yeah, that's a huge difference. Huge difference.
So I guess like how is that separation distinct or not for you?
When I'm composing, the performance aspect is almost not even something you consider. I think it would be a hindrance if you did consider it like from the get go. Like, can I play this?
Yeah.
And you could do a lot with a DAW. So I try to, like, if I'm going to write something like a solo, there's a process that goes into that. And there's a lot of cutting and trying to ensure that it makes sense logically. And there's interesting ideas in every step of the way. And like, if I wrote a solo that I thought was really beautiful and really interesting, then it wouldn't be that difficult to go back and learn it after the fact.
Yeah.
So I'm mostly focused on what can I do? What can I create that's interesting? Not so much what can I play, like right off the top of my head, Improvising is a little bit different.
Yeah.
Because
that was the next thing I was going to ask about.
Yep, exactly. So improvisation is something that I've always wanted to be good at. Even when I was younger, because it started learning when I learned the major scales for the first time, like all five, the cage system on my guitar, and getting familiar with that made a big difference. And in the beginning of just in the beginning of learning the cage system, it was like, okay, throw a 1-4-5 backing track on and noodle over it for a while. Right. And that's what I would do to improvise. And like in my mind, it was like, oh, this sounds cool. Like, I've never done this before, because everything sounds like it fits, you know? But as I would make videos of that to myself just to look, and then I would analyze them after the fact and go, God, this is not interesting. This is the most boring playing I've ever heard in my life, you know? And I would hear these guitar players come out and elicit these colors from their music and go, how are they doing that? Yeah. And it's only been, I've been playing guitar for roughly 14 years or so. And it's only been in the last year or two that I've really began to understand how to draw forth like the color. Yeah. I like chord tones and changing scales while you're playing to draw forth like what you want from the music, as opposed to just playing over something like in a grid way and not really being all that interesting to listen to, so
you keep bringing up color in a audible, like, or an oral context. So like, what does color mean in music?
Yeah. So it's, that's like the heart, like, this is something that my brother and I've talked about a lot, because my brother, he plays music as well. But he kind of makes fun of me for saying color all the time. But it's, and I don't mean to confuse people. Like, I don't experience photisms. I'm not someone who's sitting around listening to music and like, oh, green, blue, red, it's not that. It's just that, like, when I hear something that's like entirely diatonic, it's bland, and it doesn't, like, it can be pretty, but it's not colorful to me. And
sorry, diatonic meaning
of like the
only the notes in the scale.
Yeah, of the scale. Yeah, sorry. And like an extreme example, like jazz. If you listen to like some like Giant Steps or something, right?
Yeah.
All right. So like that would be like nth level degree color,
it's incredibly complex and uses every note.
Yeah, exactly. And that I would describe that almost like abstract art. Like, I would compare it to like abstract art. It's like throwing out colors and just trying to create some sort of imagery of everything. And it's really interesting. It's a really awesome piece to listen to. But somewhere in between like a blank canvas and Giant Steps, there's a world where you can paint a picture, or you can draw, I don't know what I'm trying to say, but basically, you can hear a song or a solo, and as it's progressing, go, yeah, that's interesting, that's cool. And then one note might come out, and that note strikes like something in you. I don't know what that is. And I understand theory fairly well. I can read music and I can do all that stuff, but I have a difficult time describing in a theoretical way what I'm experiencing. Yeah. And so that makes it difficult in terms of communication. Yeah. But I mean, to give some example, like I listen to a lot of Meshuggah, right? Mm-hmm. And if I were to describe their color in reference to other things, right? They draw forth a color that is not something I hear in a lot of music ever. I think it's part of the reason why I like them so much. And I think a lot of it just is, if I could guess based on like theory, I think that they're using some interesting scales, like and they're using some interesting compositional techniques, especially rhythmically. Obviously, that's like their main thing. But it's a hard thing to describe, and
it's almost like if you've never seen purple your entire life, and then suddenly you see like the purplest thing.
Yeah,
it's like, whoa.
Yeah,
this is
like music is very contextual.
Yeah,
right. Yeah. One chord by itself is nothing. I mean, it's a chord and it's pretty, or even a note by itself, like a pitch. That's like nothing. A pitch compared to another pitch makes some interesting color, right? A pitch compared to another pitch is like it could be a different type of color.
Yeah.
But then you put them in a series in a certain order. That makes that draws a picture that creates imagery that in certain contexts can surprise you in ways you've never considered and never heard of anything like it. So that's what I'm trying to, I guess, allude to.
Yeah.
So
last one on this front, and then we'll get to the hard questions.
Oh, okay.
What advice do you have for people that are first starting out in music or even just creative endeavors in general? However you want to give the advice.
One thing that I think that new music students do too much is they try to adhere to the rules too much. And like, I'm guilty of this just as much as anybody else. Like when I first started to learn about theory, okay, how am I going to write this piece within theoretical framework? And, okay, I need a 1 chord here and a 4 chord and a 7/5 or whatever, there's all kinds of ways you can approach it. But, I think your ear is your best friend when it comes to music. And I think that's not I'm not telling anybody anything new at this point, but, also like, music school, I think it provided me a tremendous amount of, resources and people to talk to about, and the time that I spent, like it helped me out a lot, but looking back, I don't know if I needed to spend the money to do it, you know,
man.
Like looking back, I'm like, man, I don't know if I needed to spend that money to go to music school. Cause I'm not doing a music oriented job,
exactly.
I was going to be a teacher, but teachers are not,
it's not like
compensated very well, so yeah, I mean, I was a teacher for a while and that's just, especially here in Oklahoma, I have a hard time with that. So
yeah, maybe there's a way to gather all of the tools necessary without having to pay an institution a large amount of money.
Yeah. I mean, if you're resourceful enough, the internet is there.
Yeah.
I mean, and you're going to have to do some research. You're going to have to really try, cause it's not like, it's not condensed in a way that's easy to understand by somebody who knows more than you. And it's their job to make it easier for you to understand. But if you know how to go out and search out the subject you're wanting to learn, then by all means, like try that first.
Yeah.
For a little while.
Definitely. All right. Hard questions.
Okay, let's do it.
What is the role of spirituality or religion in your life?
Spirituality, religion. I'm not really very religious. I grew up Christian and kind of had I don't know. I guess like the best way to describe this is a story. I think when I was in high school, I was dating this girl, and obviously because I wanted to spend time with her, I was going to church because she went to church. And this happened to be one of those churches where they like to speak in tongues, and so. My first experiencing that firsthand was pretty intense.
Yeah.
It was kind of jarring, and that was sort of the inception point of me sort of beginning to question what I believed. And because like I was at that point, everybody around me kind of believed it, and we didn't really talk about it.
Yeah.
So I let that simmer for a while, and after a while, I think I remember going to my mother, kind of asking her firsthand, like, "Hey, what do you think about this?" And that day I found out my mother was an atheist.
Oh,
I didn't know that
yeah.
for the longest time. Like she was always just kind of supportive, like whatever I wanted to do, but she never really talked to me about it. And then when I found that out, that was like kind of surprising. And then I sat on it for a couple more years, and eventually I was just like, yeah, no, I don't believe any of this. So I think that spirituality, when thought of like in a semi-logical way, can be really rewarding and beneficial. I based on some of the philosophy I've read, and I mean, I have a great appreciation for like secular Buddhism. One of the things that I remember having a really great impact on my life was like coming to the understanding that like life is suffering, and like that kind of coming to the understanding that you're not supposed to be having a happy time all the time. You know, like life is supposed, I think the default state of existence is kind of one of hardship. And if you're not in that, then you should be happy and you should be grateful. So that's been one that's been really helpful for me. Yeah. To cope with anything really.
I guess how did you reach that point? Because like, I know for me, like I hit the like hard atheist bottom and then like worked my way back up. So like where did the secular Buddhism sort of
I did the same. I did the exact same thing. Yeah. I went super angstheist with it. You know,
that's the first time I've heard that one. That's good.
Yeah. That's one of my favorite terms. But yeah, growing up, like teenage years, 18, 19, I was like, oh yeah, I can't believe I've been lied to my whole life. And blah, blah, blah. You know, I don't think, looking back now, like I think that's definitely like a teenager's response to coming to that conclusion. I think spirituality in and of itself can be extremely rewarding for a lot of people. And I don't think it's anybody's, responsibility to tell people what to think or how to think, especially based on the fact that the culture and like your own life experience could be so influential. Yeah. So it's like coming to like, I think I was always really interested in philosophy. Like growing up, my mom pushed that on me a lot, and I read a lot of books, and any sort of like hardship I may have experienced, that was kind of like my route to trying to figure it out, was maybe read some books on some philosophers or something. Yeah. And when at a certain moment in my life when I was going through some really hardcore like suffering, I sought out Buddhism and meditation as a way of maybe escaping it, and getting to the point where I sort of, once I read that thing, like life is suffering, like, I don't know, maybe that was another epiphany. Maybe that was a defining moment where it totally changed the way I thought about things. And I think it tremendously helped me. In fact, now I see people, friends and family, and who don't understand that like innately, and they have a hard time dealing with some of either the life decisions they made or some of the harder things that they're enduring, and they almost see it like the world is putting it upon them, like it's, and if they just understood that simple fact, that it would be a lot easier to sort of surmount that difficult experience. So.
What is your definition of God?
Yeah, I don't. that's a cool one. Let me think about that. Like I've defined God in my own ways, in some ways, as time has progressed. I definitely don't think it's a person or a like an entity. I think it would seem to me like it's an idea. And I almost don't even like the term God for it, because it's a big thing. Like, I mean, I had a philosophy professor in college who kind of described, he described the network, your social network around you, almost like God, like the people that you surround yourself with, and then the people that they surround themselves with. And then that spider web that sort of branches out beyond you. Yeah. As like, that's a form of God, or, so, I don't believe in sort of any divine intervention or anything like that. And God, whether it is a real thing or not, whether this is like a totally void universe of any sort of anything like that, or if it's there, or if there is something like that, I'm not sure. But, yeah, I my definition of God is the greater things around you. You know, like that's all it can be to me, because I don't really see anything else.
Yeah.
Like there's that old, what is it, like an argument, I guess, about the God of the gaps. I don't know if you've ever heard of that.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
you know, and like, I have a hard time sort of going like, everything I don't understand, that's God, you know, because like that gets increasingly smaller as society progresses. And I don't like the idea of, if there is a God, that's what it is.
Sure.
It's an ever smaller thing, the more knowledge we acquire over time.
Yeah.
But so, yeah, it's a hard thing to define for anybody, I think. And it's that to me. I don't know if I even made a point, but
that's exactly like, that's how I love hearing the answer.
Yeah, absolutely.
What is free will, and do you believe in it?
That is a harder question. Do I believe in free will? I don't know if I do. And like, I think that free will, I think that there's a degree of influence you have over it. But I don't think that free will is something that we all have 100% control of. Something that I also get made fun of by my younger brother for saying all the time is that we are the product of our past experiences and our genetic makeup.
Yep.
I say that constantly. So you heard it here first. No, I'm kidding.
I've said that a lot on the podcast anyway. So yeah.
Cool. Yeah. So you did hear it here first from him. But no. So if that is the case, it's hard to believe that some people who have schizophrenia or people who can't control their basic urges, or it's hard to believe that they're doing that willfully. Like, I mean, schizophrenia is a really good example, because it's like, there's nobody trying to hear voices, you know, and they're obviously influenced by that aspect of their biochemistry and their brain chemistry. So, I also think of motivation as a really good thing to think about, because where does motivation come from? Yeah. And in my own life, when I haven't been motivated to do what I wanted to do, whether like when it comes to composing or playing music, there have been times in my life where I felt completely demotivated to do it. And I felt like it was just this thing. I do not want to do this. Yeah. So to what degree do I have the control over my motivation? You know, if I want to be playing music, if I want to be doing it, but I just have no desire to do it, then you almost have to rely on discipline at that point. And if you don't have discipline, then you're kind of just hoping that your brain will tell you that you want to do it today, you know? So that was, my struggle with motivation was a really, kind of eye-opening, I think, experience for me in terms of what free will is and like what how you have control over it. Yeah. So, yeah.
What happens when we die?
No, that's fine. Your guess is as good as mine. I don't think anybody knows. There's no way anybody knows. And if anybody tells you they do know, they're lying to you. Even if people say like, oh yeah, I had a near-death experience, like anecdotal evidence isn't all that great of a resource to. Let it be known that I am right now altering the question to say, what do you think happens when we die? Okay, there we go. That works. Go ahead. So what do I think happens when we die? I would say my bet is that it all kind of ends. That's I have no clue. And life after death doesn't seem to make a lot of sense when we see our loved ones, in their caskets, or maybe it is, maybe it isn't. I have no clue, but I do believe that you should live a way that that is good to your fellow humans, and not even just in case, but because like I think that's an argument too. Is like, well, live this way, live to be good, just in case.
Pascal's wager.
Exactly. Yeah, I was just about to say that, but I think that's kind of a shitty way of thinking about it.
Fear of hell is not a good reason to make you a good person.
Yeah, no, I think being a good person should just make you feel good. And so that in and of itself should be enough motivation to pursue it.
Which is actually the next question. How do you determine what good behavior is?
That's relative, right? that's very relative. So if you think what you think is good is not what everybody thinks is good. And so all you can do is roll the dice and hope that what you're doing is in accordance with whatever might potentially be the greater powers. Sure. Yeah. So, I mean, me personally, I think that anything that makes me feel good is within reason. Like innately feel good. I don't know if that's a good way to put it, but like I think when you're doing something bad. I think when you're doing something good. And
heroin seems pretty great.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. See, like that's a great example. So personally, I would never do heroin, and it would probably make me feel amazing. But for the short term, and I think I have enough sense to know that will not lead down a path of good. It wouldn't benefit my family. It wouldn't benefit me. It would be very much an immediate reward. That would just not last, and it's not worth the consequences. Sure. Like everything has consequences, so.
Exactly. How do we reduce the division?
Reduce the division in society? That's I assume you're alluding to.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah. That's really hard because personally, I think a lot of the division in society is a result of social media. Mm-hmm. And I don't think that we're going to get rid of social media. It's part of our society now, and it's this new sort of it's changed the framework of how we interact with each other. So you're not going to get rid of that. It's education, maybe. I think education is probably the best way to go about it, but that's a long-term investment. Yeah. I already think that we don't invest enough in the education in this country. I think that's pretty evident. And I'm also biased in that belief because part of my degree was in education. But right. But I think education is probably the best way about it because I think a lot of the problems in society are based on the fact that far too many people don't have knowledge outside of a 20-mile radius outside their house. And not that that's a bad thing. It's just that I feel like life experience, one of the greatest things that ever defined me was traveling outside of this country and living in a different culture for a little while. And that was like probably the most eye-opening experience I've ever gone through. And I think that I've met far too many people who have lived in the same town their whole life and they don't have the mind or the influence to help them understand that like it's not good to feel self-righteous in the fact that you believe only what you believe, and like I think we all need each other. Yeah. And it's hard when half of us are not up to par, if that makes any sense. And I don't want to sound like condescending or I understand that not everybody has the same access to these resources, and that's partially also a problem. But I do think education is probably the best way to small the divide. Or that's not a good way of putting it, but yeah.
Do you believe humans are evil by nature?
No, I don't think anybody's evil by nature. I think that there are people who have a bad past experience, or many bad past experiences, maybe a bad genetic makeup. It's hard to believe that evil is a real thing. Even if we take the hardest amongst us, like it can all be justified by genetic makeup and past experience. It feels like that doesn't mean that these people shouldn't be somewhat punished or kept away from society. Like I think prisons are somewhat necessary. But I don't think that people are inherently evil. And I also do think that everyone is capable of the same degree of evil. Like you and I or anybody else, we all have evil as a capacity within us.
Yeah.
And that's something that you have to be really aware of and try to mitigate to the best of your ability. Like, society couldn't function if we allowed people to go off doing whatever they wanted.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I don't think that I don't think there's inherent evil. I think it's more complicated than that.
Yeah.
So
now it depends how you answer this next question, but
okay.
What do you think humanity is heading towards for the future?
I think there's going to, depends on what time frame we're talking about. Because ultimately, if we're talking like long term, I think there's definitely mass extinction and at some point or another.
Yeah.
In the next 10 years, that's a hard one to think about too. I worry about global warming. I worry about America, in terms of, and there is a drastic polarization happening right now in our society. And it hasn't really been helped by our current sitting president, but there's no. It's hard to predict the future. Obviously, I think it's inevitable that there will be another mass extinction event. I think that history has kind of proven that, but there's no way of knowing when that will happen or how it will happen. COVID has kind of given us some, kind of dipped our toes into the deep end of the pool a little bit, that kind of gives us all a little self-awareness and realization. So that's something to consider. But yeah, I don't know what's going to happen, obviously. Like, I hope that I obviously have all the greatest hopes for us, and I hope we can do something about it. But
yeah,
overpopulation really is something that I always think about. I saw this graph one time where they were talking about how, I think it was anytime the human race acquires more resources, our population rises to match. Like, let's say if we had the same population right now with the same resources we have now, if our population was that of World War II or like post World War II, but we had the same resources we have now, in 100 years, that will not be the case anymore. Like, there will be more people to match and rise with that level of increase. And we don't ever like get more resources and then go, all right, we're good now for a while, and like distribute them pretty evenly or whatever we can. Not to sound like communist or anything, but so yeah, I think it's inherent for, I think human nature we basically just consume as much as we can, and there's not really a easy way to escape that. I don't know where I was going with that. Sorry.
Well, no, it's just like now the resources are what they are and the population keeps growing. So
yeah, overpopulation is something that I don't know how we're going to address that going forward. I think nature will inevitably kick in and flatten the curve a little bit. So
a different usage of the term flatten the curve than you've heard lately.
yeah, that's not really a very optimistic one, but I think it's realistic.
Yeah. Well, then, speaking of optimism, what are you optimistic about for our future?
What am I optimistic about? I definitely tend to be. I consider myself, I don't know if it's true, but I consider myself more a realist. But I am optimistic about the fact that that it would seem Joe Biden might be our next president. That's, I'm not so much that I'm like wholeheartedly for Joe Biden, but because I don't like the fact that I don't like Trump, and I don't think that he's, I can't really speak so much about his policy making, but I can speak to his demeanor and the way he's treated people and the way he's created this divide, and it's very much based in narcissism. And so I'm happy that was a very elated moment for me, I guess. So that's something that I'm positive thinking about going forward. And yeah, I want things to go well, but who knows?
Yeah. What makes you content?
Oh, that's a great question. I think that's what you should always strive for. Contentedness is like, that's happiness. 'Cause like the highs are fleeting and the lows are not fun, So, when I am content, when I feel happy, and if I don't need a lot to feel content, to be honest. If I have a bed to sleep in, and people that I get to interact, that I feel loved by, and I get to express myself. I don't really need a lot of materialistic stuff, other than like the basic necessities to do that which makes me happy, like play guitar, and I like a good meal every now and then. So that's but I think that's natural. I think feeling loved and having people that you treasure around you, and just somewhere to feel comfortable. That all that stuff makes me feel really content. And that's, if I'm not going through like a really hardcore hardship in life, then that is like, I'm ecstatic. That's my heaven right there.
Awesome. When will you be satisfied?
Man, when will I be satisfied? I don't have like this devouring, all engrossing sort of like sensation to not feel satisfied. And I think this alludes back to what I was just saying, which that I do generally feel fairly content. Now, I would feel more satisfied if I were able to put together like a really epic project, like artistic project. That would be very satisfying for me, to kind of place my mark in the ground in some ways, like artistically. Yeah. If I could, because like I said before, like writing music is so time consuming. And if I could actually like get the free time to really put something together that I was really proud of, that would be extremely sathing. Absolutely. Yeah.
What advice do you have for people in general?
That's I have something for that too. Yeah. I think probably the most important thing that I have noticed in my conversations with people is that I hear the either or fallacy more than anything else, and I really want people to understand that things are not black and white. Yeah. I think that the world is always on a spectrum for the most part. There are some like absolutes in life. It's hard to really define what they are. Maybe if I thought about it for a second, I could probably give an example. But in my opinion, like everything's a spectrum. And when I'm faced with people asking me to like, well, what do you think about this or this? Or you either think this or you think this. I kind of like I roll my eyes. I'm like, I mean, there are situations where that's true, but there's also people. I feel people are prone to disregard the nuance, and that would help. I think maybe even with the division that we're going through right now, is if people were a little bit more aware of the fact that we're not just a two-party system. I mean, we are, but there's more to life, and more to think about in very many variables. There's a lot of variables, so it's hard to. Like when I hear people like wholeheartedly for one thing or one side of the fence, and it kind of drives me crazy, because it's like you're basically being fed your opinions and expressing them back into the pool. Like that's okay if that's what you actually believe, I guess, but I don't know.
Yeah. Last one, potentially most importantly, cake or pie?
Cake or pie? Ironically, I'm not a big sweet eater. I'd have to go probably with cake, I guess, but like no frosting.
Wow.
Yeah, like frosting. I can't handle I can't handle frosting. I like the cake part, but yeah, like maybe a very small amount of frosting. I don't really have a pretty in-depth answer for this one. So
based on all of the other answers that you've given, that actually makes a lot of sense. So
that's interesting. I would never have made that. I would never have assumed that, but yeah, that's interesting.
Bryndon, thank you so much for doing this with me. Where can we find you and your things?
Yeah, so you can follow me on Instagram. My username is Bryndon Scott. It's BRYNDON.SCOTT. That's like my private page. So if you're interested in hearing some of my music, that's on there. And then I do have 2 photography pages that I sort of run. One of them is just bsy.photo, and the other one is bsy.portrait. I definitely update the photo one more because especially with COVID, I haven't had a lot of time to go
interact with humans.
Yeah, hanging out with a lot of humans. So like, yeah, the portrait stuff has been kind of on hold, but I definitely, I haven't updated in a while, but I definitely have actually future projects already planned to update both. So that's probably where you'll best find me.
Sweet. Awesome. Well, again, thank you so much.
No.
I'm Santiago Ramones.
I'm Bryndon York.
You can find everything that I do on my website, santiagoramones.com. I make music. Bloom is available now, streaming everywhere. Put it on in the background or show it to your friends so you can all enjoy it together. You can also buy it on Bandcamp and get bonus content so you can sit alone in the dark with your headphones on and listen to the album in its entirety while reading and looking at the bonus content. I also make music with Power Cycle, an experimental electronic trio. Our first completely improvised album, Too Many Damn Cables, is streaming everywhere. To support this podcast, leave reviews, comments, tell your friends about it, and buy my music, because by supporting me, you're supporting the podcast. I always end the podcast with my 3 things. They shape my life philosophy. Those 3 things are: love never fails, it's going to be okay, I might be wrong.